So thank you everyone for coming today to the DIH World webinar on regulations that affect the digitalization of companies. We have a couple really interesting speakers that we're going to hear from during this webinar, and hopefully you'll gain some really good insights into what this means for you and your DIH. You can just go to the next slide. So just a couple of housekeeping things while we get started. So if you could just make sure that your microphone's on mute during the webinar. This will just make it easier for us to hear the people that are speaking. You're encouraged during the webinar to ask any questions you might have. So feel free to raise your hand or add it into the chat, or just to unmute yourself and ask a question. We'll also have a designated time at the end of the webinar to ask some questions to our speakers. So you could also save them to the end if you like, whatever you prefer. And when you are asking a question, we just ask if you try be concise with your question. We can get through the presentations and any other questions that people might have. And just so you're all aware, this is being recorded. And then we'll be sharing a copy of the webinar as well as the PowerPoints afterwards to yourselves and also anyone else who wasn't able to attend today. So we can just move on to the agenda. Perfect. So I'm almost finished my welcoming of all of you. First, we're going to be hearing from Justina. She works at the European Digital SMEs Alliance, and she'll be speaking about the experience of the Digital SMEs Alliance, which has over 45,000 enterprises across Europe dealing with digitalization. After that, we're going to hear from Alessandro from EUIPO, talking about EUIPO Ideas Powered for Business program, how the SME fund works, and he'll be sharing his knowledge on that. And then at the end, we just have a bit of time. If there are any questions that still remain, feel free to save them to the end, and hopefully we'll get to them in time. So with that, I will turn it over to Justina, if you're ready to give us your presentation.
Sure, thank you very much. And it's my pleasure to be here and present to all of you today. So I'll share my screen. I have just a couple of slides, so not to burden you with information, as I would like it to be also a little bit of a discussion. I hope you can see my screen, and I will make it bigger just in a moment. Here we are. So as rightly presented, I come from European Digital SME Alliance. We are Europe's first and largest ICT SME association. We have around 30 members, meaning national and regional SME associations, that altogether represent around 45,000 of SMEs across Europe. So these SMEs are all ICT SMEs, so it's not necessarily the type of SMEs that would be the primarily audience or clients for your DIHs, even though there might be also some. But these are definitely the more digitally mature companies that already provide digital solutions and do digitalize other industries in Europe. So these are probably more likely companies with whom DIHs would be working together in certain service provision, who they would put in touch with SMEs in more traditional sectors to do some kind of service exchange and so on, right? So it's a bit of a specific audience, but this is why working with digital SMEs, we deal a lot with policies that are linked to digitalization, since our companies are the spreaders of digitalization. And we also work a lot on various digital policies that, of course, affect our companies, but very often without even knowing the certain impacts there are also for those companies that are not necessarily the most digitally mature, but are the ones that use digital tools or make first steps into digitalization processes. So GDPR, for example, is a very clear example. It's something what first was thought to be only for digital companies, but nowadays you don't need to be very far in your digital maturity. But GDPR might apply to you anyway, right? So this is just a very, very, very well-known and old example already, but just to show a little bit the type of audience we work with and type of topics we work with. So before I start discussion, since I wanted to be a bit more active and I also want to hear from the participants, I did a little poll here just to understand who you are. I call you to press on the link or perhaps scan the QR code. And later I will reshare my screen to show you also the answers. I have 2 questions for you in there. I'm wondering if people manage to scan it and get into. Yeah, I can see that there are already some answers, so it means that a few of you managed. I will reshare screen to show the answers as soon as I'm sure that everyone is done with the code. Oh, okay, thank you. I see that EURADA's colleagues are also posting the link and the code. Perfect. I can perhaps also try to copy the concrete link. And I see we are already having a few responses. So maybe I could also reshare my screen. So I will do a new share just to show you the results in the browser. So you should probably be able to see my browser at the moment. So we can a bit understand on how this all works. Okay, we're still getting answers. So some of you are still voting. I guess it's more or most of us that already voted. So you are asked, of course, if you work at all with legislation, and I see that there are only a couple of you, so very few that indeed do provide some services that are linked to wide scope and wide area of legislations that SMEs might face. And many of you work partially with some specific focus on specific legislation. So I can imagine, I know many DIHs are focusing, for example, on data and might work on specific data-related legislations, perhaps impacts of Data Act, how this works with all the privacy legal frameworks that we have. Some might work with maybe taxation-related things or e-services, EUIDAs and other matters. Then we have one that does not work and would like to explore this, which is great. It's also one of the purposes of presentation today. And then we have quite some of you that do not work with policies and do not foresee such work. Okay, and let's see also, what do you think? Because if you don't foresee such work, you might also think that it's not very important for SMEs. So are you able now to answer the second question? Here you basically just need to say wherever you find it important or not important. And first sentence is that SMEs you work with consider digital policies important. So digital policies, I mean any legislation related to digital uptake, to digitalization, and so on. And the second statement I'm asking you to say is it important or not, wherever digital policies are important for SMEs. So first one is a perception of SMEs that are your clients, and the second one is your perception. Do you think it's important for them or not? So let's take a couple of minutes and for you to maybe read it and think about it. Okay, I think it's rather stable, so probably vote is done. Thank you very much. It's that much of exercise there was today. I will not ask you to do so much more effort here anymore. So what we see here is that we agree. I agree with you. Even digital companies I work with, those that are really front runners do not always find digital policies very important to their daily work. So we are more or less in the middle here, meaning that perhaps half of them find it not important and half find them important. So it's somewhere in the middle, right? And then most of you, or at least a bigger majority of you, thinks that digital policy, however, is important for SMEs, even if some SMEs might not think that, right? So it means there is still quite some gap here to address. That it's important, but not all SMEs understand it is important. And then I also see there is some gap, perhaps, between what you think and I think, wherever it could be important, right? So, of course, it always depends on what type of SME we're talking to, but there is definitely some space for discussion further in my presentation and also later in the Q&A session. So let me get back to PowerPoint. All right, so does digital legislation really matter? I will give you one example of currently ongoing policies. So at the moment, and among the European institutions, we have a discussion on AI Act. Many of you might have heard that, especially those DIHs that have any special focus on AI or on data. You might have definitely heard the ongoing discussions on this legislation. So recently there has been a report by the consultancy called Intellera. It's an Italian consultancy, and the report was presented last week. And what Intellera's research calculates there, and actually is built on some of the previous already existing researches by other think tanks in Europe. And they found that the cost of compliance with this legislation for SMEs that might be implementing or suggesting certain AI solutions could be up to 300,000 euro, because the legislation would require those SMEs that work with high-risk AI to implement the conformity assessment. And implementing conformity assessment, there are 9 different areas which need to be looked at and which need to be checked. And some of them include compliance costs with existing standardization frameworks. Some just require certain data to be collected, explained, and so on. So all of that together might cost around 300,000 euro, which is, you can imagine how much is that for SMEs. And then high risk areas are definitely, it sounds like maybe something just healthcare, you know, something very specific that simple SME you might work with, does not deal with. If it's just a simple manufacturing company, because I know that perhaps manufacturing companies is very, very usual client that would come to DIHs, right? So they probably would not work in any of these high-risk fields, but it's absolutely not true, because we have, for example, critical infrastructures that again sound something very special, but actually it might be anything. And there are so many manufacturing companies providing bits and pieces that later contribute to big value chain in critical infrastructures, and that might use in their automation processes AI solutions and might need AI solutions, right? And on the other hand, there are so many digital companies offering AI solutions. So the story goes on and on and on. Of course, there is still a discussion who should be exactly liable, and wherever it's a problem with general purpose AI that most of SMEs would use, or is it about specific AI, and so on and so forth. So it's not all black and white, and there are much deeper legal discussions here. But the very simple fact, without going much in depth, because we can definitely go in depth in separate discussions on specific legislation in other webinars, in future webinars, or if you contact our organization in general. But the simple fact is that if SME works in certain areas and uses AI solutions, or especially develops AI solutions, the conformity assessment cost may be really high. And that comes just from one legislation. And then we have number of digital legislations all the time. Of course, we all know the story of already mentioned GDPR. We have a never-ending discussions on e-privacy, for example, currently on update of e-privacy that we don't know if it will go anywhere, likely it will be killed, but it's still existing. Then we have numbers and numbers of other legislations coming up, right? So this is just to illustrate the fact that there is an impact. And indeed, still, many SMEs, as you said, they do not consider it very important. They consider important daily matters, taxation, what we need to do tomorrow, right? And they do not have time so much to consider all these things. Another example of cyber resilience and different legislations we have in Europe on cybersecurity. Again, it of course depends on type of company, on sectors it works on, wherever it's any critical infrastructures are affected and or not, and so on and so on and so forth. But indeed, cybersecurity still is very important. It's still regulated. And many companies, especially those providing solutions, but also ones in transition that start adopting digital solutions, need to consider. And there will be also legal implications on these companies. So indeed, there is a lot going on, and it is important. At least that's our position, but it is important. Now, acknowledging this fact, or willing to debate on the fact, wherever it's important, the question is, what do we do in Digital SME Alliance, and maybe what you can do, or some ideas of how this could work. How could we go around with legislation to help our SMEs? So you already know that we represent 45,000 of these companies, and we all have different needs, even if we are all digitally mature and very advanced in what we are doing in ICT field. We have 10 active working groups that we will talk about, and we have around 450 experts that are mostly experts coming from SME. So absolute majority of them are SME experts that also help us to work with legislation. As such, maybe it's worth mentioning that in our network, we also have quite some digital innovation hubs, and many of them have become recently European digital innovation hubs. I have examples of perhaps the most active ones and the best known ones here in the slide, but besides these four, we have more and more of them in the network. So our members usually are either consortium leaders or partners in consortium or associate partners that are part of digital innovation hubs. So in a way, we are also involved in this. Our three pillars of work are these: policy, funding, and networking. So these are three big pillars on which we work and on which we provide services towards our SMEs. And of course, we need to focus now on policy, but this is just to show for you that policy is like this one big part of the work we are generally doing. And as mentioned, we have 10 working groups, and 10 working groups have been a crucial pillar so far for us to work and to provide services for SMEs. So we have 5 working groups that are permanent, and they are exclusive for member SMEs and member associations only. So one dealing on cyber security and data, one with digitalization of industries, another one with IPR, and I know much more will be said on IPR later today. Then one on digital skills, and finally one on standardization. Then we also have focus groups. Focus groups are the ones that are more open for public. So there are also different types of entities besides the SMEs that are invited to join. So we have focus group on AI, where we work not only with AI startups and SMEs from our network, but we also invite those that are not within our network to join. And we also have decision makers joining this group, so European Commission, Joint Research Center, and so on. When we have focus group on sustainability, where again, it's open for SMEs of our network and also external ones, as well as guest researchers. And we have focus group on smart communities, where we have our companies. We also invite external companies, and we also invite public sector representatives, mostly representatives from regional and local authorities. And finally, we have task forces. These are working groups that are created on for certain purpose. So to discuss certain legislations or bigger subject matters, and with the time they either get dissolved or they become working group. So currently we have one on blockchain and one on specifically on data that deals with Data Act and similar legislations. Now, what we do in these working groups, and that's perhaps the most important, just to show you what can be done. So we have 2 levels of approach: bottom-up approach and top-down approach. So coming from top-down, we monitor legislation. So our position here in Brussels allows us to follow more or less everything was going on. We are specifically focusing on legislations that are related to digital sector, digital industry, or digitalization. So all the cross-cutting horizontal ones, we leave to other associations where we are also members, for example, SME United, or anything related to employment and so on and so forth. We don't focus on that unless it has any specific digital part in it. So we monitor what's going on based on priorities that we identify and we believe would be the most important for our members. We, of course, try to explain them to our companies, what's going on, that this is particular legislation that specifically will impact you. We try to explain legal implications to the companies and potential benefits or issues that could happen if legislation that is in process now would be adopted, or after its adoption, implications of implementing it and the ways to implement it. We also develop a lot of different supporting tools. So we have guidelines for certain legislations, we have recommendations, we have trainings and other types of resources to help SMEs to cope with that. And we also consult the SMEs to develop our opinions. So as said, we have around 450 experts that are contributing, but of course for working groups, we also discuss with larger pool. Experts help us to dismantle it and explain it to their peers, and then all the companies can contribute. So having explained everything, we collect the input and we of course go towards decision makers and we explain the recommendations to them. Then there is also a bottom-up approach. So we ask SMEs to raise any concerns they have, even if there is no certain legislative files ongoing, or they don't know if it's really a matter of legislation or not, but we believe that they have an issue and maybe there is some way to resolve it on EU level. So we listen to all of that. We encourage discussions for that within the working groups. And then if there are any good ideas, again, we try to get involved with decision makers to see how this could be addressed on European level or elsewhere. And of course, in working group discussions, sometimes even if it does not seem to be policy discussion, maybe sometimes it's just a case that SME wants to present any issue or just the way of working they have. Sometimes starting from simple examples of day-to-day business, companies discuss for so long of how things could be done differently, how we could work together, but if they work together, there are certain matters, and sometimes these matters are matters of standardization, sometimes they are matters of legislation, and here we can step in again and help them out with that. So we have this very dynamic process, I would say, and a lot of consultation going on. And perhaps from here, since I know that we are quite on time now to finish, some ideas of how this could affect you and what you could do. Of course, one of the things you can always, you're all welcome to join us as members. If you want to explore all of this, get some of this and provide it to your companies. But besides that, many of the resources we have, they are open. So you are always free to go to our website. I will share that with you as well, and see what we have there, or contact us for specific information. If there are any issues that SMEs you work with deal that are related to digital policy, we are always happy to listen, to help, to talk about it. It might be same issues that our companies face. So we are also happy to invite you to discussions or provide any kind of support or direct you towards materials or positions we have developed. Then we also welcome you to maybe discuss with us, and if there are longer term things where you see priorities or you want to know more, we are thinking of creating together with our members some kind of discussion for policies with EDIHs that are within our network. So here definitely there is some field of collaboration with DIHs within the world. And then finally, of course, you are all part of great network where we saw that some of you already deal with specific legislations, some deal with many of them. So that's definitely, I think from this poll, you can see that there is some space maybe for the world as well to allow SMEs to allow EDIHs and DIHs to work together to see how can you guys help each other to address certain policy matters, especially if these are cross-border matters, where companies in different countries might have questions, but answers are either unified across the EU. So here, if you have EDIH or DIH having knowledge and another one in another region not having it, I think this is why we are creating this European networks, so that you will be able to help each other and deliver services together. So I just encourage you to, on these horizontal matters that we see are important, to work together. So that's briefly it, but I'm happy to answer any questions, and I will clearly, of course, drop the website and the contact details so that you can come to us. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Justina. That was really interesting. Does anyone have any burning questions for Justina at the moment? We also have time at the end to ask questions if you're still thinking of what you might want to ask most, but if anyone has a question now, feel free to jump in. Nope. Okay, perfect. So thank you so much, Justina. We might come back to you with some questions at the end of our session. So next up, I'd like to invite Alessandro Corrado from EUIPO to start his presentation. If you're ready, Alessandro.
Yes, good afternoon, everybody, and thank you, Valerie and Giacomo, for this kind of invitation. We are very happy to be here. And before starting, I would like to share a short video to show you, we think, a nice engaging video to show who we are and what we do, and then we can start with the, let's say, traditional presentation. I hope you can see, so listen.
Protecting creativity is a must in today's business. At the European Union Intellectual Property Office, we are experts in protecting intellectual property, and we are here to help our customers unlock the highest potential in Europe and beyond. In intellectual property has a measurable impact. IP-intensive industries contribute significantly to the EU's gross domestic product and are strong employment drivers. For small and medium enterprises, investing in IP helps boost their results. With ongoing projects like the Design Europa Award or Ideas Powered for Business, we are bringing intellectual property closer to everybody, while generating IP value for businesses and citizens.
I found about the SME fund, and actually it was very easy because it's straight on the website. I think having my brand name registered will help me to expand further in European countries and have my company name protected. It saved my time. I got an expert help with it, and now we have the trademarks. So it increases the value of our company. So huge recommendation for IP Scan. In 3 words, I would describe that this was fast, reliable, and easy access service.
Ideas Powered for Business came to life to empower EU SMEs and startups, enforcing their competitive advantage. We have launched supportive instruments for SMEs, such as a dedicated website, easy filing, free IP personalized consultations, IP Scan, or the SME Fund. To help reach SMEs and startups, we have created a new complementary network, the Ideas Powered for Business Network. It is made up of business players from the SME ecosystem and brings business expertise and knowledge together, stimulates behavioral change towards IP, and fosters innovation and growth. We are a self-financed, decentralized EU agency. We strive to deliver the highest level of quality in the services we offer, always with our customers at our heart.
Okay. I will now stop sharing and start my presentation. I hope you enjoyed this video. I think it was a nice way to start presenting about who we are. So basically, the EUIPO is the European agency. I will try to put in is the European agency based in Alicante, in the south of Spain. And our core business is the registration of intangible assets, mainly trademarks and design at European level. And as you can see from the slide, we are able to manage the registration of over 200,000 EU trademarks and 110 registered and design. So basically, our role is to manage the registration of the overall number of trademark and design at EU level. In particular, take into consideration the different application in the 23 official languages. The EUIPO is the second biggest organization as a EU agency, is a decentralized agency, self-financed. We have more than 1,600 employees. And in our organization, we do have several departments. I would like to mention some of them. The observatory, which is, let's say, our center of knowledge, which launch on yearly basis several EU studies on intellectual property. Some of them are sectorial level, and others, let's say, more general one in terms of trying to understand the trends of intellectual property from this different perspective in terms of the counterfeiting, the piracy, but also the, let's say, benefit of intellectual property in terms of economic benefit, and also how intangible assets can be considered a driver for innovation and growth. Actually, in our last study, the Intellectual Property Scoreboard, launched in October 2022. I want to mention some of the main figures that I extract for you in terms of the number of SMEs that register intellectual property rights. So at this stage, only a reduced number, more or less 10% of EU SMEs do register their own IP rights at the European level on one end, but also at the same time, I would like to show you also some of the main aspects that we understood from the scoreboard. That those one who register IP rights do see quite an important figure in terms of better IP protection, almost 60%, an improvement in terms of reputation or image, and also better long-term business prospect, almost 50%. In this regard, as you probably know, in 2019, the European Commission launched its own action plan on intellectual property. And in that context, EUIPO contributed in terms of implementing its own dedicated program, which is called Ideas Power for Business program, with the two main objectives. The first one is to support European businesses in increasing the level of knowledge on intellectual property matters. And on the other hand, to define a set of financial and non-financial supportive measures to facilitate not just the understanding, but the concrete experience that entrepreneurs have when they faced with intellectual property matters. I would like today to present some of the main measures already launched since 2020. In particular, the easy filing, the SME fund, which is a voucher scheme as a way to reimburse entrepreneurs that are interested in registering their own trademarks, design, but also patent this year at national, regional, and European level. And the free personalized service consultation. I will go quickly through the presentation. But before that, I would like to mention the main reason why I'm here, because we received the invitation from EURADA, which is one of our 20 partners who decided to join our new Ideas Power for Business network. And the reason that we established a new network in order to create new synergies with those business players who are in touch with small and medium-sized enterprises at European level, in order to increase the level of outreach and the possibility for the IPO to create awareness campaign to promote our measures through the network and create a potential collaboration with all these associations. As you can see from the slide, there are several players covering different business topics. We have some players from, let's say, the financial environment, such as Eurocrowd, Invest Europe, and others related the most traditional, let's say, type of business actors, such as Eurochambre, which represent the Chamber of Commerce, or SME United, that has been already mentioned, which includes SME Association at national level, and many others. And we do believe that through this new network, we will be able to support European SMEs in a more efficient way. As I was saying before, today I would like to present briefly these three main initiatives: the free personalized consultation on intellectual property, the SME Fund, which is, let's say, one of our pillar initiatives to support those entrepreneurs, those startups who want to register directly their own intangible assets, and the easy filing tool as a straightforward way to register directly through the EUIPO portal. So let's get started. Free personalized consultation on intellectual property for SMEs. So basically, the idea of this service, which is available in all EU languages, is to, on one end, to collect the interest from IP lawyers. Basically, now we collect the interest from more than 200 IP law firms who express the availability to support on voluntary base small and medium-sized enterprises on one end, and on the other, we are still collecting the interest from SMEs, and we do believe that also through your support, we can increase the number of entrepreneurs who can take advantage of this measure to receive such a support from the IP law firms. So basically, EUIPO define and implemented an online tool as a platform to collect, let's say, on one end, the availability from IP law firms, and on the other, the interest from the business. And what we do is to create a kind of matchmaking, no? So in terms of aligning the demand and the supply. Is a very straightforward measure. Everything is implemented online. Here you can see the process is a 4-step process. Basically, any SME who want to participate can apply directly online through our portal. And then at the end of the presentation, we will send you some references, and then can directly decide the list of providers that would like to, from that, we would like to receive the support. In less than 10 days, we will directly connect the entrepreneur with the provider, and then, of course, in order to guarantee transparency, EUIPO, let's say, will define the matchmaking, and then it will be up to the business to contact and directly link with the IP law firm. We do believe this is a very powerful tool for all businesses that have a limited knowledge on intellectual property, and in this way they can, let's say, start this journey and have a better understanding on, for example, the different type of IP rights, or for example, if they are interested to know how the process for registering an application works, or if they have any particular issue for a specific infringement, they can also apply through this service. So we do believe that in this way, all EU SMEs can have a direct connection with IP law firms that can support for a certain number of hours on voluntary base to start, let's say, this journey together. Moving to the next measure, the SME fund. This is, it's important to say, this is one of the most relevant initiatives promoted in the last 2 years by the office, in collaboration with the European Commission, in particular DG GROW, and in collaboration with the national IP offices. This initiative is part, let's say, of the overall SME program with, let's say, a multi-annual scope. We are just finishing the second edition of the SME Fund, and we are working to have a third edition starting from January 2023. So we thought to present you, but giving you also the main elements to have a better understanding, and of course we will be happy to further provide you more information after the meeting. Basically, is a voucher scheme which works like I would say the vast majority of voucher scheme as a first come first served basis. I can go quickly through the presentation. It is composed by 2 vouchers. The first voucher has 2 elements: the IP scan and the trademark and design registration. As you can see, in the voucher 1, you have different opportunities for registering national, regional, and EU trademark and design with a different fee, a different ceiling. Because we do believe that in this way we can cover, in collaboration with the national IP offices, the full range of opportunities for small and medium enterprises that are interested to register trademark and design. In addition, what is IP scan? Basically, for those SMEs who are interested to have a kind of consultation in terms of having a dedicated analysis on the potential intangible asset that they could have internally, through this IP scan, an IP expert will go directly to the entrepreneur to have an exchange to identify which are the main elements that can be potentially registered and how to define a strategy in order to exploit the potential of the intangible assets. In the voucher 2, this is something new for this year. We also cover the registration of patents at national level. It's important for me to mention that the EUIPO is the core business is focused on registration of design and trademark. But for this year, in collaboration with the national IP offices, we also foresee the registration of patents at national level, with the possibility to request the reimbursement up to 50%. How it works? The process is very easy. All the process is online, as you can see. Basically, is again is a four-step approach. You can apply directly for the grant through our portal, and in less than 15 days, you will receive a first feedback directly to your email address. The document that you have to provide are just your ID, the ID of the entrepreneur of the company, and the VAT number, and apply at the grant. As soon as you will receive a positive feedback, you can start managing the process of the registration. And when you will finalize it, then of course you will ask for the reimbursement. And in less than 3 months, you will receive the reimbursement directly in the bank account. We try to make it as easy as possible, as you could see. And I can say that at this stage, we are quite happy on the feedback, but also on the results. During the first year, we've been able to support more than 12,000 EU businesses. And this year, if I recall correctly, we already reached the 16,000 milestone, which is for us a very good result. And as I was saying before, this measure will be financed also for the upcoming years. Easy Filing basically is an online tool for those EU businesses, EU SMEs that are interested in registering their own trademark, but also now design in a very straightforward way. Basically, we try to simplify as much as possible the registration procedure. And through this new Easy Filing tool, there's also an AI application that can also guide the participant in order to avoid any potential mistake or to avoid to lose time in the procedure. I now would like to finish my presentation. Here we have our contact detail. What I would like to mention you that in case you will be interested in promoting and support us in further disseminate at national, regional, local level these measures, we are more than happy. In this sense, we collaborate with EURADA in providing them promotional materials such as brochure, banners, relevant content that can be also added directly in the web page if you are interested. So in case you foresee potential interest in further disseminate to your user, your clients, we will be more than happy to support you in this regard. So feel free to contact us directly or through EURADA Secretariat, and then we will be happy to share with you this promotional material that is translated in all EU languages. And we do believe that in this way we can not just provide you information, but also empower your role in be a business actor and supportive actor to your own client and users. I hope that I am still in time, but then of course, if you have any type of question or comments, feel free to express yourself.
Does anyone have any questions for Alessandro? If not, I might ask a question. I imagine for a lot of smaller or new SMEs, intellectual property isn't one of the first things they're thinking about. Is it something that companies should be thinking about when they are really new or still small, or is it something that's more of a concern for them later on?
Well, actually, we do believe that, according to the type of business, according to the type of sector, but in general terms, it would be very important to start considering intellectual property at the very early stage. In particular, if we start thinking about, for example, the importance of registering its own brand, no, for the company, but also for the new product that the entrepreneur would like to launch. So, for example, for the branding, yes, the reply will be definitely yes, but also for the main names, it would be quite important to have an overall strategy that take into consideration the domain name and the brand in combination, no? And in addition, we can also mention that the patents is super important to start considering how and when the innovation has to be registered in order to, on one end, to take advantage of the intangible asset as a driver for access to finance, but also to prevent any kind of risk that a competitor can have a look, no, or can try even to copy. So also for patents, it's quite relevant to at least to consider and have in mind to develop its own strategy. We do believe that, the exercise that we are trying to do through this program is to not just create awareness to small and medium-sized enterprises, but to support in defining a real IP strategy to further exploit their own intangible assets.
Great, thank you. And there's certainly so many free or very affordable resources out there to support companies, so that's great. Does anyone else have any questions you'd like to ask either of our speakers from today? Very quiet audience. Justina, if you're still here, I might ask you a question.
Sure, go ahead.
Yeah, so I found it really interesting in one of the polls that we did about if we thought digital policies were important for SMEs. And it seemed like the consensus amongst us in the meeting was that they weren't super important for SMEs. I was wondering, in your experience, if you found this to be true, like an accurate representation, and is it a matter of they're not interested, or they're just not aware or not very informed about the policies and why they might be relevant for them? I was wondering if you could shed some light on that.
Do you mean what SMEs themselves perceive important?
Yeah, like if SMEs are really looking into their digital policies and the effects. So
indeed, I think it really depends on type of SMEs, but clearly there is a minority, even among our members. It's not that 100% of them do think that policies are important. So it's still a job to be done. And I think it's mostly a job to be done by organizations like ours, the ones that support business, so business support organizations, to somehow bring down the message that this can hurt your business, because digital policies are not important until you get fined, until you face certain issues, until your rights are being somehow infringed, right? And once that happens, then they start looking into, and then they say, but there is a policy or there is a legislation on that. So of course, many of them, indeed, it's true that they perceive it, that it's probably something not important or could be important one day, but since I'm a startup, I have bigger issues to deal with. But I think maybe even if you don't need to be an expert of everything that's going on political level, and understand, especially for smaller ones, it's really impossible. We should at least have somebody next to them, and digital innovation hubs are very, very well positioned to say, okay, based on business model that I see you have, you might need to consider X, Y, Z as like key priorities for you. So wherever you deal with personal data, wherever you need to consider cybersecurity, wherever you deal with AI and so on. And based on that to say, okay, I understand you can't deal with all legislations, but there are a few of them that are key for you.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Thanks to you.
Well, I think if there's no further questions, we will wrap up the webinar. Thank you so much to Justina and Alessandro for presenting. You both shared some really great information for our DIHs. And a recording of the webinar, as well as the slides from both presentations, will be shared with everyone. So If you do want to look into it, either for yourself or for some of your SMEs, you'll have all that information in your inbox. So feel free to follow up with them in the future. And
Thank you for
that,
the invitation.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you. Bye.
See you everyone. Bye.